world of television, there are very few shows, honestly, that change the world. Then there are other shows that have a long stay, are popular. Then there are a lot more that are hit or miss. They're on for a few seasons. Maybe they start off hot and fade away. You can see we're working our way down the ladder. Then you get to the bottom, the shows that are here and gone so fast that you have no idea they were even there. That is the topic of Blink and You'll Miss It Retro Part 2. These are TV shows that came and went in the blink of an eye, so you probably missed it. Back in episode 137, I did the debut of Blink and You'll Miss It Retro. 6-pack, 6 different topics to talk about. That first one was food-related, and here we're going to crack open some TV shows. I'll be honest, out of these 6, there's only one that I remember, and I must have just been watching TV at the right time to catch this show before it was immediately canceled. I would think most of you out there listening would have had the chance to watch one of these shows if you had chosen to. So there's no cheats here where it's shows that were on the air for one episode in 1948. These are all pretty recent. In the late 1970s, one of the most popular recurring segments on Saturday Night Live was the Coneheads. It was about a family of extraterrestrials, the husband and wife, Dan Aykroyd and Jane Curtin, from their planet Remulac. They literally had coneheads. And it was great. They had a lot of their own language, and it was a fish out of water story, but the early days of SNL, so it was just classic. It's one of the most well-known segments ever on the show. In 1993, they made a bit of a comeback with the Coneheads movie, and yes, I will say I saw that in the theater. The movie was 35% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, so it's rotten. And it made just over $21 million on a budget of $30 million, so it was a big-time box office fail. But the film version of Coneheads was not the biggest fail when it came to this franchise. That was the Coneheads cartoon that was out in 1983. This show debuted as a pilot on October 14th, 1983. Animated, it was voiced by the actual voice actors, Dan Aykroyd, Jane Curtin, Lorraine Newman as their daughter, Connie. I can't really find a reason why this didn't take off, why it wasn't a hit. Maybe it didn't translate to being animated. There is some talk that there was a really obnoxious laugh track that went with this show. It literally was one episode. Here's the pilot. Nope. Grand opening, grand closing. If you want to watch the pilot episode of the Coneheads cartoon, you can find it for free everywhere. YouTube, archive.org, which is where I find a lot of good old stuff. Yep. Coneheads failed as a movie, failed as a cartoon, but we'll always have the old SNL skits. The next show here, we don't even have SNL skits for. Did you remember the Quiz Kids Challenge from 1990? Naturally, this was a game show centered around kids. The show was based loosely on older Quiz Kids shows that were on radio and TV in the 1940s and 50s. But it differed because there were 3 kids between the ages of 12 and 14 that would be battling 3 adults. It was similar to Jeopardy in that there were different categories with the questions there. There was a triple play question, double or nothing round. There ended up being a viewer's choice category. It seems like it would be intriguing, but I also think that this concept was lost in a whole series of game shows that came out. It said that Quiz Kids Challenge was one of 5 different game shows that debuted in syndication in the fall of 1990. This is one of those shows that had a lot of episodes. It was on for a total of 16 weeks and 80 episodes. So it's kind of a cheat with the Blink and You'll Miss It where Coneheads had 1 episode. But despite that, do any of you remember the Quiz Kids Challenge? It was pretty much on in the fall of 1990 and that was it, and it was gone. They've had other kids versus adults game shows. Are You Smarter Than a 5th Grader? Things like that. I can tell you, being in that age group that would have been on that show, there were plenty of other game shows that I would have chosen to watch had I known that this show was even on. What happens when a successful deli owner doesn't have any heirs of his own to inherit his deli business? Why, hire his housekeeper's children to help him run it. That's the fascinating plot line behind the next show, Singer and Sons, also from 1990. Boy, what a good year that was. It starred Harold Gould as Nathan Singer, a Jewish deli owner, and Esther Roll as his housekeeper. And the hilarity ensues when the two young African-American men try to help this older Jewish man run his deli. It's a fish out of water, a clash of cultures, whatever you want to call it. It lasted for a whopping 4 episodes in June and July of 1990. It was brought on as a mid-season replacement that then needed to be replaced. The way I end up finding a lot of this Blink and You'll Miss It retro content is because I like to binge watch these old commercials compilations a lot of times after I've popped an edible. And I believe that the Quiz Kids Challenge and Singer and Sons were in the same batch of commercials. When you've got a campy kind of musical comedy that was a success in the 60s, why not try to replicate it in the 80s with none of the music, none of the heart, and none of the comedy? That's our 4th entrant here, and the only one that I remember was the New Monkeys. Oh my God, if you don't remember this, and I don't blame you if you don't, it was the stupidest of stupid attempts at rebooting a show. It's kind of the same idea as the original Monkeys show that was out in the mid to late 1960s. 4 young, aspiring pop musicians looking for stardom. But this was not Davy Jones, Mickey Dolenz, Michael Nesmith, and Peter Tork. Oh no. This was Larry, Jared, Marty, and Dino. I don't even care what their last names were. They don't deserve them. This show had 13 total episodes. I don't know if they all aired. I remember seeing one and also seeing one of the trailer commercials for it where these 4 idiots are standing in the desert and one of them says, "Whoa, low tide." Even me at 9 years old, I thought that was so just cringe. Yeah, that was just terrible. If you go to the IMDb page about New Monkeys, the featured review, the first one, says this was a horrible show, the worst show ever made. And I kind of second that. Speaking of musicals, what could be better than the musical comedy about a widower, mayor of a small town, and his 2 kids? One's a civil rights attorney and one's a hippie. Ooh, the clashes are there in this classic show, His Honor, from 1979.
Meet His Honor, his staff, his kids.
First time I ever saw sparks fly from jam.
Premieres Thursday on NBC.
This is one word. Hizzonner. What the hell kind of name for a show is that? I get that it's a play on His Honor like a judge, but this show lasted for a whopping 7 episodes between May and June 1979. And basically every time there was some kind of a problem on the show, Mayor Cooper would break into a song to deal with it. Emmy Award-winning actor David Huddleston starred in it, wrote it, produced it. So basically he funded this whole thing and it just bombed. You could say there was no honor for His Honor. Thank you. I would see myself out, but we got one more left to go in the 6-pack Blink and You'll Miss It retro TV shows. You thought my joke was bad there. What about the name of this show, Small and Fry, from 1983?
My name's Nick Small. I'm a private eye. This is my partner, Chip Fry. He's all right. This is my daughter, Phoebe. She thinks Chip's fantastic. One day...
This was a Walt Disney produced show that lasted a total of 6 episodes between March and June of 1983. And I know you're dying to know the premise behind that super hilariously named show. Nick Small and Chip Fry are private investigators. Due to a lab accident, Fry is able to shrink to 6 inches tall, which sometimes helps and sometimes doesn't help in their investigations. I don't know. I would have been 5 years old when this came out. I don't even know if I would have thought as a 5-year-old kid that it was a fun show. You imagine the pitch meeting for that? Ooh, I got a name. Small and Fry. Ugh, boy, that's terrible. And then it got green-lighted. I couldn't find any ratings reports for any of these shows just to see how badly they did. I would assume that since they basically all were done within a few episodes, that naturally the ratings weren't good. And none of these were critically praised but didn't get ratings. They were all pretty much critically panned. People didn't watch. And then they were just gone. So we've emptied the cans on the 6-pack of Blink and You'll Miss It Retro Part 2 with TV shows. I'll be bringing this segment back every now and then when I get a good 6-pack worth of topics to talk about. I gotta wait and have patience. Not everything can be as good as New Monkeys and His Honor. If you really want, I'll put links to some of these shows in the description of the podcast, but I don't think you really want that. I think you'd rather forget about these shows as quickly as this segment ends right now.